Hello everyone and welcome to the inaugural PwC Energy Transformation webinar. My name is Ian Watt. I'm a director with Strategy and part of the PwC network, and I'll be the moderator for today's episode. We're here today discussing innovation at work at a time where energy companies in Canada and around the world are experiencing profound transformation unlike anything seen before in terms of scale, scope and speed. Disruption caused by new technologies, regulatory and environmental pressures, and significantly changing customer needs and behaviours is challenging the very fundamentals of the traditional utility business model, one that has relied on market certainty and stability for many years. Utilities, therefore, must evolve, not only to survive but to win. As our report, Opportunity Amidst Disruption, confirmed, 75% of executives agree. The burning platform is clear, transformation is happening, and simply reacting is no longer a sufficient strategy. Rather, utilities and companies need to proactively innovate. A culture of innovation underpinned by a distinct innovation capability is required to find and unlock value and growth in existing value chain positions and in value chain positions not previously explored. Value is also shifting. It is shifting downstream towards the customer, and the customer must now be seen more as simply the ratepayer. Customer centricity, engagement, and providing value for customers profitably must become a key focus for all market players. Given this level of disruption and transformation, becoming a leading innovator is now a much more compelling strategy than ever before. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. Throughout the program, please feel free to ask questions to any of our panelists by clicking the red Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen. We'll address them during the Q&A period at the end. If you're active on Twitter, use the hashtag #EnergyTransformation to share comments and continue the conversation post-webcast. We're joined today by three excellent panelists, whose full bios you can read using the blue speaker bio button at the bottom of your screen. But I'd like to briefly introduce each of them. First of all, Daryl Wilson. Daryl is the President and CEO of Hydrogenics, a global provider of advanced hydrogen solutions. Daryl brings a 25-year background in technology and industrial management, including operations, manufacturing, human resources, research, product development, organizational change, and turnaround experience. We're also joined by Mark Henderson. He's the Senior Vice President of Energy Solutions and Services for Alectra Energy Solutions. Alectra is the largest municipally owned utility in Ontario and the second largest in North America. Mark is the executive leader of Alectra's competitive business, along with the emerging technologies and CDM teams. He also manages Alectra's strategic partnerships, which we will explore a little bit later. And finally, we have Laurie Desautels, who, like myself, comes from the Strategy and team, where she is a senior director with our digital team. She advises clients across Canada in the use of emerging technologies, human-centered design, and how to become a digital enterprise. Thank you all very much for being here today. So here's a look at the discussion we'll be having with our panelists today. First, we will explore the topic of growth, where growth will come from, and how innovation will fuel that growth. Next, we will discuss the power of partnerships and collaborations, using innovative strategies to partner and create even greater value in our businesses and in the market. We'll then turn our attention to some of the key enablers critical to underpinning innovation in the future, including digital and culture. And finally, we'll finish off with our Q&A, where we'll get to the questions you've asked throughout. So let's get started. Growth. Unsurprisingly, growth remains top of mind for most executive leadership teams, irrespective of industry. Innovation is at the heart of new growth. It is a table stakes strategic capability that will be required to create market differentiation, identify and capitalize on new opportunities to capture incremental and breakthrough growth. In utilities, we are seeing innovation in new products and services, which is fueling growth in new parts of the value chain. These include things like distributed generation, smart meters, grids, smart homes, to name just a few. And we're also seeing a range of innovative solutions that break traditional market silos and boundaries, and have application and value across a broad range of industries: utilities, transport, and other heavy industry or asset-based industries. So Mark, you're driving growth on the unregulated side of Alectra. Could you please start off by telling us what that looks like and where you see the most potential for the future when it comes to new and innovative offerings?
Thank you, Ian. I guess for Alectra, we have a series of existing competitive businesses across a variety of traditional utility services, sub-metering, high voltage, and also streetlight maintenance and conversion. And we also own and operate a fleet of solar assets as well. But into the future, we see growth across the distributed energy resources platform, so more specifically microgrids, battery storage, the whole concept of net zero communities you referenced, or smart cities, the electrification of transportation, and the coming together of all of those we see as where the future will be for the non-regulated side of Alectra. In addition, you have the whole home energy management B2C play that's emerging across all kinds of markets as well. So I think specifically DER platforms is where we think the big growth in the immediate future is, Ian.
Thanks very much, Mark. And Daryl, how are companies like Hydrogenics breaking down those sort of siloed boundaries that previously existed in utilities and drawing new connections between the energy sector beyond just electricity? So maybe while we think through...
For a long time, we've focused on electricity to keep the lights on and liquid fuels for our vehicles and gas to heat our homes. And we've had a very electricity-centric focus to the greening of our energy systems. What we've been doing is using hydrogen as a way to bridge these silos, so migrating renewable assets such as wind and solar and hydro into making hydrogen as fuel for vehicles. Just recently, we've announced 2 hydrogen fueling stations for the City of Toronto to enable the deployment of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. In addition, we're using hydrogen along with our partner Enbridge as a means of energy storage. So rather than just having an electricity-centric focus on energy storage, we're making a bridge into the gas grid, which is a vast source of energy storage, which is in the form of gas. So bridging some of these old silos using new media such as hydrogen is a tremendous opportunity to break out of some of these historical silos.
Great. Laurie, I mentioned at the start, and I think Mark and Daryl would say the same, that we are seeing a big change across the whole value chain in utilities. Value is beginning to move into different parts, and there's greater opportunities for growth. As an industry, though, that has been historically quite slow to adopt new technologies, how does the thinking of utilities need to change in terms of where they find value? And what have you seen in other industries that utilities can follow?
Yeah, so the first thing that kind of came to my mind when I thought about this question was a statement that Peter Sonnegaard from Gartner made, I think in around 2014, and it was, the quote is, "Information is the oil of the 21st century and analytics the combustion engine." So it's kind of relevant for this discussion today, but whether you agree with that analogy or not, the underlying truth in it is that data and analytics is a cornerstone of really any digital transformation today. And in our recent digital IQ study in Canada, it's a skill set that is really a large gap in most Canadian organizations, and it's recognized by executives that they need to start addressing that gap. So to specifically answer the question around growth, it's data and analytics and the skill sets around that are going to drive additional value creation that you've seen in some of the more digitally mature sectors such as financial services and retail. And all of that data that's being produced by sort of these sensors and other technologies that are being deployed across the value chain is being assessed in terms of the business opportunity around that data itself. either as an opportunity to add value to a client or customer interaction by establishing new business models around data brokers. Fundamentally, the capabilities around data and analytics is a pretty important aspect to consider as utilities move forward.
Ian, I just wanted to, this is Mark, pick up on, I think your opening commentary, painted the landscape particularly well for what's in front of traditional poles and wires utilities. And I guess at Alectra and at PowerStream before Alectra, we had the view that our business is being transformed. It's being cannibalized in some regard. And so if value is going to migrate away from the core business, our view was we needed to create a solutions business, a competitive business, to go try to recapture that value by providing enhanced energy solutions for our customers. So it's an interesting dichotomy we have of an existing business, and by no means do we buy into the death spiral conversation that goes on about utilities. We come at it from an opportunity-focused, innovative mindset, which is if, in fact, value is going to migrate away, and it is, because people are knocking on our customers' doors as I'm sitting in this boardroom with you, trying to incent them to look for other solutions to reduce their energy costs, then we need to try to capture that value rather than let it leak away from the Alectra family of companies. So it's a big challenge, but I thought you painted the landscape particularly well about what the industry looks like.
Yeah, and I think it's a really fascinating topic is utilities, not only in Canada but across the globe. Those that haven't had to really think about how they're going to create value in different ways other than just from their regulated asset base. And they've structured their capability set around that. They haven't necessarily thought about the long term and how disruption in various technologies and various other market factors is going to play out, what new capabilities are going to be required. And I think Laurie paints an excellent picture around data and using data in a new way to have greater intelligence of our business, greater intelligence and understanding of our customer, and particularly when we look at some of the innovative products and solutions that both Alectra, Mark, and Daryl, yourself at Hydrogenics, are taking to market. These are all fundamentally customer-facing value areas. And the customer and the role of the customer is becoming an increasingly powerful concept and construct for these traditional business models to factor in. And I think we'll discuss more about that later in this webcast. I think it moves us well onto our next area of focus, or our next theme in this webcast, because if we think about the business model, often we think about the capabilities that we need to do to deliver our strategy. And I think more now than ever, we've got a situation where utilities and companies do not necessarily need to own all the capabilities in order to win. In fact, there are various alternate pathways to capture growth through increased collaboration or indeed partnerships with others. And in our report, Opportunity Amidst Disruption, and indeed our previous report by PwC, The Road Ahead, we talked a lot about the partnership model and the benefits that could be attained from greater levels of collaboration. So, Daryl, you touched upon in your introductory comments around your partnership with Enbridge, and you've worked with them in developing utility-scale energy storage projects in North America, specifically through the Power-to-Gas project. And we note that this technology was selected by an independent panel of judges to win PwC's Innovator of the Year award in our Vision to Reality program. And perhaps could you tell us a little bit more about this project and how collaboration allowed you to really execute against this strategic idea?
Sure. It started with Enbridge, where they created what they called a Pathfinder group, and this was a group that was specifically mandated to go and find new innovative technologies wherever they may exist, engage with the firms that supported those technologies, and then look at project development. And so that was the beginning, with a very innovative mindset inside Enbridge to conceive of themselves as an energy company rather than a natural gas company. Then came the very innovative program with the IESO in Ontario to procure grid stabilization and storage services some years ago. So that was the foundation of this project. In many of the energy storage activities, we're finding that it's difficult to create significant value and pay for the CapEx in the project if only one value stream is brought forward. And in this project with Enbridge, we've identified 4 or 5 ways where we can deliver grid stabilization services, deliver clean hydrogen fuel, contribute to the decarbonization of the gas grid, and other activities, so that when we put all of these value streams together, through our innovative partnership, we can find value that's very attractive for Enbridge. And this was identified many years ago before we had all of the climate change and cap and trade initiatives in Ontario. So it was a great start, and it's simply become even more attractive now with the cap and trade activity, where the value of these kind of sustainability projects and decarbonization projects has gone up significantly.
And Mark, you have similar experiences in partnerships and collaborating with other market participants. And indeed, one of your 4 central themes around everything Alectra does is this idea of extended. And I suppose partnerships in many regards fall into that realm. Could you perhaps share some of your experiences with the partnerships you've had and how these partnerships position you to be able to play in the broader energy platform?
Sure. I think we talk a lot about at Alectra the concept of extended enterprise, that the world is very complex today. You mentioned in your opening, customers have significantly more sophisticated requirements, particularly on the industrial, commercial, institutional side of things. And so I don't think any utility has the answers within the 4 walls of itself, and it needs to really deliver that value and those solutions to customers in partnerships with others, whether that's a strategic partnership, a financial partnership, or a technology partnership. And so one of the ones that we've had a lot of traction with has been with the Korea Electric Power Corporation to bring their microgrid technology to North America. We built a microgrid within our own distribution system using their technology, because we know alone we can't deliver the total bundle of value any one of our customers may want. But if we can find partners, we may be able to do that. Another one, we piloted with Rogers, some home energy management technology, about 500-600 customers, where we piggybacked on the Rogers home security, added some energy technology to that. And again, it's that we can't bring complete value to the customer by ourselves, but through partnerships, what we can do is deliver value to customers and preserve the all-important customer relationship. We don't want anyone, if we can avoid it, getting between ourselves and our customers in our own service areas, and maybe these platforms give us the opportunity to work outside of our service areas as well to deliver value to other customers.
Thanks very much for that, Mark. It certainly is something that we are seeing globally, the use of partnerships and collaborating so that we can address those opportunities and can capitalize on those opportunities in other places of the value chain that we don't necessarily have a right to win. Laurie, in your experience of serving not only utilities but across in other clients, either public and private sector, have you seen similar sort of partnerships, and how does that sort of build into this need to evolve a business model to something that was quite traditional to something that becomes a little bit more agile, and not only through just simply the use of other means of accessing value chain growth, but in order to make business more efficient and effective?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a global world, the digital world that we live in, and how you research and find partnerships, how you work with those partners over time, and then the eventual impact to your customer and the experience that they have with you as their provider can change radically if you introduce partners into the mix. So one of the things that I think about, and it happened in the financial services sector years ago when electronic payments first emerged, and as we probably all know, that electronic payment has evolved considerably over the last 20, 25 years. And the banks early on recognized the need to either develop partnerships or develop the technology themselves and own that technology in the end in order for them to continue to add value into to their clients. So it's encouraging to see this idea of partnership getting more serious attention in the utility sector.
And Daryl, from your perspective, clearly this is a top-of-mind focus for Hydrogenics. Any additional comments you would make on partnerships and collaboration?
Yeah, we've noticed a pattern with the customers that we've been able to develop throughout the world, and there's three attributes that distinguish innovative leaders that seek out these kind of partnerships. First of all, the senior leadership has a very strong bias for innovation. So normally we find the CEO is making it a very focused project on his part to find and incent the organization to look for these kind of opportunities. Secondly, as part of the strategy of the organization, there's been a very clear element identified that new innovative ideas and reconceptualization of the business is a core part of the strategy. And last, we find that there is sustained assignment of competent staff to develop the opportunities over multiple years. So some energy utilities seem to have kind of a quick hit approach. Let's go and find something and do what everybody else is doing with wind or solar or some sort of services business. But the successful clients that we've developed have staff assigned over 3-5 years or more who have been working these kind of opportunities over the long term, and they don't expect quick hits. They actually realize that developing new thinking and new pathways to value takes a sustained effort with very competent staff.
Thanks for that, Daryl. And I think that touches on something fundamental to one of the key enablers behind future growth and harnessing and fostering a culture of innovation and a capability of innovation. And we'll touch on that in a little bit more detail shortly. I think when we just reflect on even what we've heard over the last 20 or so minutes, a lot of the things that we're talking around is how we really leverage digital and technology. And if we look at our next theme around digital enablement, it is probably by far one of the key enablers that we need to have in place in order to win in the future. And if we think about the technological advances coupled with the consumerism of energy, it's driving rapid, significant transformation in companies, not just in Canada, but across the world. And in our 2017 Industry Trends series, we observed when we surveyed and evaluated companies across the globe that, for example, cloud computing has become mainstream for many companies. The Internet of Things is changing how both industrial and consumer-orientated companies do business. And it's happening at a pace that has surprised developers and adopters alike. And so these digital approaches offer utilities, I think, real opportunity, not only to increase internal efficiency and effectiveness, which is key to longevity, but also to accelerate their advantage in a changing and increasingly competitive marketplace. Laurie, I know you mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar, but I think utilities have been typically slow to adapt to new technologies, new ways of working, and bringing in a new capability to meet that new growth demand. If we turn our attention to think about the fact that our customers now more than ever want more information, they want more data, they want more insight, they want more control, and they want that in a seamless cross-platform experience, similar to what they get and experience in other industries like retail and banking. Can you share with us, perhaps linking to the work that you've seen in the PwC Digital IQ report, how utilities can take this next step forward, how they do become more capable and willing to embrace digital and technology and innovation in their businesses to advance their growth agenda in the value chain segments that they play in.
Yeah, so that 2017 Digital IQ study showed that Canadian companies are doing good things in digital, but they're still very customer-centric, and they're not ignoring but not paying enough attention to the employee's role in delivering that seamless omni-channel customer experience that consumers are expecting these days. That's not a bad thing. That was step one. But in order to really improve the value that you're delivering across your value chain, employees need to be brought along with you. And there's a term that we use at PwC. We call digital is a mindset. It's not just about technology. It's about how you leverage that technology, how you think about solving problems, using things like human-centered design and agile to test and learn as you go, rather than deploying solutions after a 2-year project and realize at the end of it that you missed the boat. So when I think about innovation and what employees need to start thinking about, there was another quote that I read about innovation that I really liked, and it was, in order to innovate, you don't need to look for a great idea, you need to look for a good problem. And part of the process that we use with our clients around design thinking focuses the discussion around looking for a good problem, framing that problem in the right way, going wide then narrow as you start to ideate and look for solutions for that problem, and then prototype and test and learn on some of those hypotheses before you zero in on a particular solution for that particular problem. That type of skill set for employees is not necessarily a comfortable place for them to live, and they may not actually have the digital tools within the organization to actually foster the type of collaboration that is needed when you're looking at solving problems in that way. You mentioned cloud as well, and the fact is, if you can leverage cloud to deliver or test digital solutions, you can do that in a much more agile fashion than you can if you're running all your own infrastructure in your own data centers.
Thank you, Laurie. Daryl, just building on that, there is a lot of conversation around how digital is changing the way we think about other sectors, including transportation, both now and in the future. We're aware that Hydrogenics is building different products for the transportation sector, including zero-emission commuter trains and hydrogen fueling stations. Can you tell us around the journey you've been on from both a digital perspective, digital transformation perspective, and in terms of bringing these technologies and products to bear?
Absolutely. I think the digital direction is very supportive of public transportation rather than personal transportation. And so we've seen a significant upsurge, especially in Europe, in how to deliver clean and efficient public transportation. And just recently we've had our successful launch of a hydrogen fuel cell commuter train in Germany with Alstom Transport. Typically, electrification of the public transport system has meant stringing more wire up over the railway system to deliver electric power to trains. And what we've done with Alstom in Germany is create a train which can transfer electrically generated renewable energy through wind and solar, convert it into the form of hydrogen gas, and then we put the hydrogen gas on the train. When you put the total cost of this system against the normal way of electrifying the railway, it's about half the total cost of ownership versus the normal process for electrifying railways. So with this new innovative approach, the opportunity of extending electrified rail throughout the world in a new manner has been opened up. And sometimes when we track new ideas in the digital age, we go back to old solutions like more wires or more batteries to deliver those new solutions, when we need to open up our minds and say, okay, how do we get these clean energy attributes delivered in a way that makes better sense from a more cost-effective point of view? Major infrastructure investments by governments around the world have been a way of stimulating the economy, but we've been focusing on how to do that in an innovative way so that when we spend this money to stimulate the economy, it's done alongside major innovations so that the total cost of these new deployments is reduced. So infrastructure innovation and cost-effective clean technology actually goes nicely together if you open your mind and leave some of the old solutions and think in new ways. And that's been the advantage of this new solution that we've been deploying with Alstom Transport in Europe.
Thank you, Daryl. And indeed, thinking in new ways is top of mind for you, Mark, as you think through growth at Alectra. And I know that you're building a whole suite of products and services that are incredibly innovative and leverage many of these digital themes and technologies that have been mentioned on the call so far. Perhaps you could explore some of those and touch on how you're using, in particular, Internet of Things, and how you see that actually in the utility of the future.
Right. So if you step back and you think about at least the context of Ontario, for 100 years the grid looked very stable and very similar. Generation, long way away, thick wires down the transmission tower lines to the municipal boundaries, smaller wires on poles to all that's fundamentally changed very rapidly. And you stack on top of that the advent of the smart meter implementation and what that's made available by way of data, both for utilities but also access to that data from the customer side of things. And so you've gone from a highly centralized grid to a rapidly distributed grid very, very quickly. And you've also gone from not just two-way power flow, but two-way info and data flow. And to your point in the intro, the customer who is, for many customers, very interested in that data today. Not all customers, obviously, because we sometimes talk about residential customers as if they're all the same, but they're not. But there are many who are very active, and they want access to that, and they want to manage their energy for any number of reasons, including cost, but also sustainability, et cetera. And so we think there's a tremendous value in data. A data strategy, data analytics is the key. There's going to be so many. Everybody's seen all of the forecasts about how many things are going to be connected. And our CEO several years ago coined the phrase social energy network to kind of try to paint a picture of what we think the future is going to look like and the role that the electricity grid will play in that as a central spot. And one of the innovative things that we recently did was a residential solar storage pilot project, 20 homes having both solar and storage with the controller mechanism that we actually own the asset in the customer's home. They get to keep some of the critical load in the battery for resiliency purposes, but we also get to aggregate up and create what is really a virtual power plant. And the ability to do that because data and information can flow, the technology exists today. I think if you kind of look at that, and we've expanded that through a study with the IESO about what if there were 35 or 40,000 of those homes, what could that mean? And so the possibilities, I think, are bountiful and endless, and I think creates an exciting future for utilities and for customers both.
I completely agree, Mark, and I think what we're seeing globally is a trend of as various technologies fall down the cost curve, they're becoming more appealing for all types of consumers. And if we couple that with some of the interesting initiatives that retailers are partnering with some innovative companies to offer new solutions to homes, if we think about how it's changing the whole supply-demand concept and way of thinking about that and around what true baseload power is required moving forward as we think about microgrids and distributed generation, it certainly is an interesting future and one full of opportunities and at a cost point that makes it attractive for customers and a value perspective that has got significant resonance with many utilities and companies across the value chain. So if we think about our final enabler, and probably the key enabler of them all, the culture and culture of innovation. I think we've all heard the phrase culture eats strategy for breakfast. And as executives and as consultants and as participants in this market that we live in, we've found that to be true time after time. When we try and change our organization, any sort of sustainable change or any sustainable value creation really rests on the shoulders of us being able to address and evolve our culture. And that can be an incredibly hard journey. And I think the same is true for developing, or potentially true for developing the right culture for innovation, to ensure that we are repointing and refocusing who we are through a new lens of innovation, leveraging the right skills in our organizations today in order to create the new value of tomorrow. And Laurie, when we talk about an innovative culture, we don't necessarily just mean thinking internally, of course. When it comes to utilities, it means looking at the ratepayer as more than just the ratepayer and as a valued customer. What industries can utilities learn from when it comes to taking a different lens when looking at their customer?
Well, I think that those industries that have very digitally mature interactions with their customers are looking at their customers in different ways. And we spoke earlier about data and analytics driving decision making around how you interact and provide value to customers. But there's a new emerging type of science that mature digital leaders are using called behavioral economics. And this comes down to the basic fact that human beings, even though we think we're rational, aren't necessarily rational when we make decisions. And we end up with blinders on and our behaviors are instinctual versus planned. When you think about that from a customer's perspective and the types of solutions and value that you're wanting to provide to your customers, you need to consider that as you design those solutions so that they're more responsive and adaptable to your customers' needs. The same goes for your employees in developing an innovation culture. If you don't fundamentally understand the behaviors that are driving the way that your employees use a particular process or choose to adapt to a new transformation that is being executed within the organization, you're not going to get the digital culture changes or the cultural innovation that you're looking for without first stepping back and understanding what behaviors are driving the need to not change. A good example of that is we did a recent study from this, I think it's called Opportunity Amidst Disruption, How Energy Transformation is Shaping Canada's Utility Sector. One of the stats in there really surprised me, and it was 35% of Canadian energy consumers say they understand their bill completely. So that means the other 65% are confused in some way. If we really truly want to get the energy efficiency and have our customers' behaviors change, and honestly, the energy efficiency programs that have been established to date haven't been all that successful. So how do we get people to change behavior? Well, the first step is really understanding what's driving that behavior at a deeper level so that you can design experiences that will actually help them change their behavior.
Absolutely. Mark, you've had a lot of experience in very recent terms of thinking through culture and thinking about how to bring the right culture to bear to drive the business forward, not just from a concept of innovation. And you brought 4 equally sized utilities together to create Alectra, which in itself is quite innovative and incredibly challenging. Now that you've formed this larger organization, how do you retain the nimbleness that you had at PowerStream to keep innovating in this new arrangement?
I think there's three key parts of that at Alectra. One is innovation is an embedded core value of the corporation. 2, it's a structural, and I say that is that in my group that I lead, we have an emerging technologies team whose job it is to stay on top of the leading technologies that are being deployed and look for ways to design pilot projects so that we can pilot new technology, learn fast, adapt, and figure out the path to commercialization as quickly as we can. So we actually have a group of people whose sole function it is to do that work. And then the last part is cultural. And on that front, it is about making sure that we message from the top of the organization the importance of innovation to our sustainability and our future, and that we align internal mechanisms to support innovation. And so we have an innovation committee, for example, help drive not just external-facing innovation, but also, importantly, internal innovation to make the business run better. So it's looking at both sides of that coin of innovation.
Thanks very much, Mark. And we see that as well in other parts of Canada and the world of, I think, the right balance. Having that internal focus and obviously thinking where the future value is going to be, but getting our own house in order is a critical thing, and culture is a fundamental component of that for sustained outcomes. And Daryl, the same sort of perspective from in your world, and you, I know, have put a lot of work at Hydrogenics into creating a culture that will support innovation and have your team thinking about the bigger picture and further areas where Hydrogenics can create additional value in new products, new services. How does that work at Hydrogenics?
Well, one of the things we've learned is that innovators are disruptive. And when we look back at some of our utility customers, one distinguishing trait is that our innovative customers actually encourage and support the disruptive folks within their own organization. In other places, we see these kind of people are sidelined or given a very rough time or even run out of town entirely. But disruption and innovation is a bit uncomfortable. And so there's a need to nurture, support, and encourage folks like this rather than run them out of town. And this is an attribute of some of our major partners where they have absolutely supported disruptive people within their own ranks, and we do that as well. The two other practical things that we do, which I think make a big difference, have to do with openness in the work environment. So our entire office is open. So I have no private office myself. I sit with the entire team, as does everyone else. This is something I experienced in the Japanese work environment at Toyota, and I think it makes a huge difference. It means there's a continuous conversation every hour of every day throughout multiple functions, and much more natural collaboration and, frankly, less meetings. I understand in larger organizations this is challenging, but I think within the innovative strategy and new business development areas, an open office is a very critical asset that changes the culture in a very dramatic way. And the second practical activity, again, I learned from my time working with Toyota, is to construct a war room, or in Japanese it's called obeya, a big room approach, where all of the information related to the activity is available for everyone to see all of the time. And so we had this short expression in Toyota: anyone at any time can fully grasp the situation and take responsibility as a team. And there are 10 whiteboards in a war room in our office where anyone in the office can walk in and all of the information about all of the business is on the wall. And that allows immediate access to understand what's going on, where are the concerns and problems and opportunities, and how can we all contribute to moving the ball down the field in the direction that we've chosen to go. And so open sharing of information in that kind of visual management environment is very, very critical. This is not a digital thing. It's not in the computer. There's not all kinds of, television screens to support this. It's simply whiteboard marker on whiteboard. But that access to information transforms the culture so that everyone is pulling in the same direction and thinking fresh thoughts about how we solve our problems, how we seize our opportunities, and how we move the ball forward, especially when it's a high-speed innovation culture that we're trying to pursue.
So that's one of the really interesting things that I find about the way that we're starting to deliver projects for clients at PwC, and we use the term immersive co-creation, and while there are some digital elements to that, it's fundamentally about getting people in a room together and defining the problem and ideating on solutions and eventually building the solution as a group. It creates that passionate adoption that you're looking for if it requires significant transformation within your organization. But it also has the potential to generate really creative and innovative ideas that you wouldn't get otherwise. So heartily support that thinking.
Just to pick up on, I think Daryl raised an incredibly important point, and that is you need to get out in the world to see innovation firsthand. I've spent a lot of time in the last 2.5 or 3 years in Korea, Japan, China, and the UK, and the amount of innovation that's happening, it's a real stimulant. And your story about Toyota, Daryl, one of the reasons we actually built a functioning microgrid at our own corporate head office is because we walked into the world headquarters of Nissan in Japan, and they actually had a Nissan Leaf on one floor and built a conference room on stilts above it, and were powering the conference room from the battery of the Nissan Leaf. And it sent us back to our own office thinking, we need to build a microgrid where we could bring people to show them how you could deliver energy differently at our own corporate head office. And so we did that. We built one that included solar, it included wind, it included natural gas generation, 3 types of batteries, control, and we are able to show customers what innovation looks like. And here's a small sample. Yes, it's small, but it was really because we got out in the world and we saw it. And I think that's about keeping an open mind that in all of these businesses we're talking about or opportunities, the models are still very nascent. And so you have to have a leadership team that's committed to keeping open mind, innovative approach to let's figure out the right way to unlock the value that we can see is here in these businesses.
Thanks very much, Mark, Daryl, and Laurie. All very incredibly important points. And I think as we've navigated through these themes, what we're seeing is something that says that, relying on the previous ways of working and previous strategies that used to create value is no longer going to be enough. And keeping an open mind, creating this culture of innovation, driving it through leveraging new digital and technological solutions is really going to become table stakes for organizations to be able to win in the future. So all very powerful comments and observations. We are now at the time of some audience Q&A. So as a reminder to anyone that's on the webinar, if they would like to post a question, please do so, and we will endeavour to answer that in the time that remains. We do have an initial question that has come in, and the question probably for you, Mark, and then for others to chip in as required. The question is, do you feel that the utilities with all the engineers they have are in a position to leverage that skill set, that specific engineering skill set, towards the benefit of analytics?
Well, I certainly think that engineers can play a very important role in that. And, we have an example in our own shop where, as you know, we have smart meters, and through our operational data store, we were able to find a way to get real-time transformer loading for the first time ever up into the control room, so that our control room had instant, immediate view into any transformer in the system and what the loading was at any given point in time. That whole process and opportunity was created by a team of our engineers. But I think also what's important is utilities need sort of what might be viewed as non-traditional utility employees to benefit from analytics. And I think of marketers or strategists or analysts who can look at consumer behavior, who can look at demographics and psychographics of customer data that we have available to us, and load profiles and load patterns and consumption patterns. And I think those aren't the type of people we've historically had in the utilities, but our conservation and demand management team has some of those folks. They do a great job of making sure that we can take the data we have through analytics and turn it into value for ourselves and for our customers.
Laurie or Daryl, any additional commentary you would make on that particular question?
To add to the the commentary around you need different types of people to leverage the data that you're generating out of all of these new technologies and the analytics around them. I think the approach that your traditional engineers take these days is starting to shift as well, as from very detail-oriented, methodical planners, and not that that's not a requirement in that field, but the idea of more testing and learning as they go, and using some of these tools that allow them to do that, things like Agile Analytics that allow them to pull different data sets together in interesting ways to find patterns more easily than the traditional tools of the past are also equally important.
Thanks for that, Laurie. Another question has come in, and this one on thoughts on full-time innovation staff versus a distributed approach where employees contribute time as available. Perhaps, Mark, we'll turn to you first, and then to Daryl.
I think for us the answer is both. We want all of our employees thinking about being innovative in the work they do every day to serve customers better, to be more efficient, to be more effective, and we provide them with tools to do that. And at the same time, we have this group, the Emerging Technologies team, who we rely on to kind of look at the market-facing opportunities that are available to us through new technologies, new business models, new services that we might be able to deliver, and kind of, as I said, do the pilot, learn fast, adapt, figure out the path to commercialization. I think, given the landscape that you so correctly painted about what utilities are up against at the opening of this webinar, I think you want to have both of those things working all of the time in your organization. Because if we can't have our internal transformation rate match or exceed the pace of external transformation, we're falling behind every day, and that could be troublesome for any utility.
And Daryl?
Yeah, I think the utility industry has done a great job when it comes to safety of realizing that it's everyone's responsibility, and the same stands for this subject. Throughout the organization, there can be great ideas that have to be harvested and contributions to innovation from everyone. And then the senior leadership issue is very critical, so it might be great to have a staff dedicated to innovation, but if they're not well supported by the senior leadership, that would be a big problem. But finally, there is some function around opportunity finding, business development, and the nurturing and development of new innovative business streams that absolutely requires dedicated staff. So I agree with Mark. It's a both and is the answer to this.
Excellent. And I think just from my observation, serving clients across the world in the last few years and in this utility space and facing this transformation, I think it's truly testament to the culture you've fostered in those businesses that enable these innovative teams to really come together and really see the value in doing that. It's quite hard initially, I think, for organizations to see how innovation can fit in as a full-time role, and I think testament to the work that you've been doing at Alectra and at Hydrogenics. We have time for one final question, and I'll ask each of the panelists to think about this. The question is, can third-party organizations, not utilities and non-vendors, really associations and government bodies and think tanks, lend a hand towards utilities in facilitating innovation and the exchange of ideas? So is there really a place for them as an association at the innovation table?
I guess from our perspective, 100%. And I think about our partnership with the IESO to first deliver the Powerhouse program, the residential solar storage pilot I talked about, not just as a funding partner, but as an innovation partner, to want to understand what that could bring to the market, and then to work with us on a feasibility study about the potential of something like that if it were dramatically expanded, and what would the impact be on deferring generation, transmission, or distribution investments. And so I absolutely think stakeholders across a wide spectrum, the regulator can assist in making it easy for utilities to do these innovative projects, even if they can't be rate-based, for example. So I think everybody has a seat at the table for innovation.
Yeah, I would add. So organizations like PwC, even in convening this meeting, is providing the function of spreading best practice and facilitating communication across multiple sectors. So I think that's very positive. The facilitative role of consultants to help new thinking to emerge, I think, is very critical. And then on the government side, there are many impediments to innovation from a policy and regulatory point of view. And there's a need for utilities to very actively engage with the government and regulators to help them understand what's happening on the ground and engage them in thoughtful processes around reconstructing the future environment. IESO in Ontario has been mentioned already, and I would credit them with tremendous leadership in this area, especially on energy storage. They were very much engaged with the energy storage industry in Ontario. They put out a procurement that was very open-handed to new solutions. They made that procurement in a way so that new innovative companies could participate and, in fact, locked out some of the traditional players so that innovation had a place. So a constructive dialogue with regulators and the government is very, very critical to move innovation.
I would also add that governments are definitely, I mean, they recognize the need to change themselves and their ability to react with more agility with the fast pace of change that's facing them. And having done a lot of work in digital strategy in the public sector, there's a strong desire to embed innovation within their organizations, as well as part of that whole immersive co-creation process that I talked about earlier. It's not just an internal exercise of, how do I solve or define this particular problem? It's a collective exercise with other external stakeholders in the room with you. And that can actually be a really uncomfortable position to be in, but can foster the buy-in, education, and bring new ideas to the table that were never brought before.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And may I add that any questions that we've received, a number of questions, any of those that we've been unable to answer, we will answer those in follow-up communications. Thank you very much for posing the questions. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you very much to Daryl, Mark, and Laurie for taking the time out of their busy schedules to provide such thoughtful insights around this topic, innovation at work. I think from the conversation we have had, while it's difficult to predict with any certainty what Canada's energy market will look like 25 years from now, what is certain is that it will be very different. Getting there will leave a lasting impact on energy companies and customers alike. So this was episode 1 in the Energy Transformation webinar series, and we hope you'll join us for episode 2 in the coming months. Information on upcoming episodes and the video recording of today's program will be posted within the next few days on PwC Canada's Energy Transformation page, which you can access via the URL widget on your screen. Please do take the short survey that will appear on your screen when you exit your console. Your feedback is very important to us and will help to ensure we continue to deliver content most relevant to you. So thank you very much once again, and we look forward to the next episode.